Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us and being at ProductCon. My name is King-Hughes, Senior Director of Product Management. So what is a technology stack? It is a list of technologies and services that we use to build and run one single application. A technology stack quickly summarizes the programming languages and frameworks and tools a developer would need to interface with an application. But because most coding languages have well-known performance attributes and limitations, the tech stack hints at the overall application strengths and weaknesses. But as we continue to evolve the product to remain competitive and to drive growth, do you stay with your existing tech stack or do you go and build a new tech stack? Today's topic, building a new tech stack versus sticking to what you know. So let's turn and learn a little bit more about our panelists. We have Benjamin Kaiser and Bella Renney. So Benjamin, tell us a little bit about yourself and what products you're currently working on.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me here today. It's great to speak to you both. So Contentful got its start as a headless CMS a few years ago. And really the journey that we've been on is going from a headless CMS product to a content platform. And that journey has been all about really embracing developer tooling, developer mindset, the builder mindset, and providing the tools that they need to go off and do great things with content, create new digital experiences that we all enjoy every day on the web and on our phones and all the different channels. I joined Contentful coming from a knowledge management background at Zendesk. I've been now at Contentful for 2 years, and the similarities between the two are really embracing this kind of builder mindset, because what we learned at Zendesk and what I've really even more fully embraced here at Contentful is that platform builder first mindset and how to really bring that into the platform. So I guess in terms of my role and my job, I'm Vice President of Product at Contentful. And again, I've been with the company just a little over 2 years now.
Thank you, Benjamin. Bella, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're working on.
Yes, I'll just echo Benjamin. It's great to be here, and thanks so much, Tara, for having me. It's really exciting to kind of have this chat. So as it says on Zoom, my name is Bella, and I'm the head of product at trey.io. So Trey is kind of similarly embracing that kind of platform mindset and builder mindset. So Trey is an integration and automation platform that facilitates the sort of creation of workflows that pull together, that enable the kind of creator of those workflows to pull together various kind of disparate data that is housed in different SaaS applications. You know, think about your CRMs or content management platforms or anything else. Apply kind of integration logic to automate those processes and to break down those kind of data silos between teams. And we also facilitate kind of the engineering side of, okay, if you want to build out a way to enable your customers to integrate their data with their kind of the data that they have in your platform with other parts of their own tech stack, Trey facilitates a platform approach that enables that through kind of APIs and embedding technology and things like that. So that's kind of the two sides of the coin our platform approach kind of takes to provide a sort of one-stop shop for kind of facilitating that seamless flow and then exposing the abilities to integrate and automate between tools. So yeah, excited to talk about tech stacks. It's bread and butter for us.
Well, thank you. Oh, thank you both. Go ahead, Benjamin.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Bella mentioned a couple of interesting things there. And I think one of the themes that runs through a lot of modern companies, companies that are trying to really add value to the overall ecosystem, is that we're trying to be that place where you can do a lot of different things in a kind of a one place, because it's too hard to come up with a million different parts of the ecosystem and then stitch them all together individually. And instead, what you really want is sort of domain ownership in the platforms that you adopt, and then you connect those. And it seems there's just so much value that can be created by developers working in that environment versus working in an environment that's filled with kind of application silos that have different proprietary ways of working, and they can't really speak together unless you do a lot of investment. And I think what we're kind of ending up with as an industry is agreeing that, okay, APIs are the way that things should really connect. These APIs should be suitable for modern building tooling that developers want to use, that we're actually, they're our customers. And so we have to serve them by giving them what they need to be productive, rather than giving them an arcane set of APIs potentially, or SDKs that are difficult to work with. Instead, we need to come to them with what's the best possible experience we can give the developer in creating value between these more powerful platforms that can be connected together. And that's the world that we kind of see for our customers and what they're trying to achieve. And I think, from what Bella mentioned at Trey, it's echoing the same kind of philosophy, which is, which we firmly believe in as well.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. And that is just, I really like what you said, and both of you actually, about the builder mindset. I think just like in product, how it's so important to break down silos, it's just as important to do that with your tech stack, because it makes it better for the teams that support it. It makes it definitely better for the development. It makes it better for the company and the bottom line, because you don't have those extra layers of complexity. So, what's your general thought about building a new tech stack? And Bella, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting one. I think that for me, the goal always has to kind of be, this is sort of a classic product-y buzzword, so forgive me a little bit, but like it really has to be like the impact that can be generated. And I think then it becomes, yes, a velocity question and an efficiency question, but I think I'll caveat sort of any tech stack decision making and changes with, I think sometimes they get a little bit bogged down in kind of like, okay, well, if this is going to increase our velocity, or is this going to make us more efficient, or kind of like, what's the ROI of this, and including kind of this tool versus that tool. And I actually think that those are, dare I say it, a bit distracting from kind of the ultimate goal, which is, okay, what impact are you trying to drive towards, and then almost backwards plan the tech stack sort of creation and planning to say, okay, if that's our ultimate goal, the impact that we're driving towards, then yes, you can look at the strands of efficiency or velocity or facilitating collaboration or any of those other things. So I think that's kind of where I come at it as, and so I'll give you an example, right? So if you're thinking about impact, and forgive me for using one that I'm obviously pretty accustomed to and comfortable with, which is at Trey, what we enable for our customers is we say, what's the impact that they want to have? For example, offering a lot of integrations very quickly and very seamlessly to their own customers. And that's the impact that they're driving towards, either because it's a revenue model and they price on integrations, or for whatever other reason. And then you can talk about, okay, what's the efficiency? How can you get there with the most minimal resources possible? And what's the velocity? How can you do it as quickly as possible? And that then sort of drives a discussion around, are we going to use a new tool to do this, to drive towards that impact? Or are we going to build a solution ourselves? Or are we going to use a tool that we currently have, just much better? And I think that that's kind of how I think it should be evaluated.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bella. Go ahead, Benjamin. Sorry.
I would agree. I think that's like what Bella mentioned about focusing on impact and end results rather than focusing on the pieces themselves as if they were kind of in isolation is not as valuable than really focusing on that end result that you're trying to drive. And I guess the builder first mentality says that if you give people a broad range of tools that they can use from a bunch of powerful APIs they can use, does that set somebody up more to create more value, versus do you give them a very specific solution that does one thing but maybe is harder than to integrate into some other parts? And so I think it's again, like thinking about the experience that you want to deliver to your customer. And for us, it's developers. And that experience that we want to deliver to our customers is a lot of choices and ways of doing something but in a very organized and cohesive way. So it's the sort of openness of choice of like how you implement something or how you attack a problem, and giving you enough options that you can really mold it to your business model, mold it to the problem that you're trying to solve. And that's what we try to drive. So you could pick a specific technology or a specific way of releasing something or any part of the stack that you want to support. But I think the key is provide a platform that lets our customers pick the stack, right? We're not trying to push a particular technology or methodology. There's a few things that we favor that are, I would say, favored by developers and cutting edge. So for example, we offer GraphQL because a lot of developers really like it. And we added that to our stack because that was the thing that we felt would help developers create the most value and would drive the most impact for Contentful. So it's that kind of decision making rather than, as Bella said, sort of evaluating a tool for, well, a specific stripe of it, like efficiency or velocity. Well, actually, is it maybe even just what they want to work with? That's the other part of this that I think kind of gets lost sometimes when you have these businessy conversations. You forget that you're delivering an experience, even if it's APIs. So for example, an API that does one thing versus one that does a batch of things, that's an experience that you choose to deliver to a developer. And it may be super costly for you to implement that batch in the back, but it might be worth it to you because the impact that you're trying to drive is when a developer sees that batch API, they just go, oh yeah, that's exactly what I need. That's exactly what I want. And that's what we were really trying to get to. So yeah, just to add my 2 cents to that.
Well, thank you so much, Benjamin and Bella. I think focusing on the impact and the outcome is definitely, there's lots of value there, because what you do is you give, your intended target, a broad range of tools, just like what you said, Benjamin, not necessarily something just specific. They can have, it's kind of like liberty and compatibilities for all, and they can all dive into that. And then from a product perspective, you can take that and build predictability around it and build a roadmap around it. And it's your building blocks to the future, and just kind of staying in this hub. It's like, I don't know what all these things do. And we have to bring these tools together to be competitive, but how do we do it? How do we infuse more efficiencies in that? Thank you both. Very, very, very insightful, and a lot of great nuggets for our audience on that. Bella, how do you plan for facilitating the request of other teams for product usage data?
Yes, great question. I think it's one that always comes up, right? And I think that kind of piggybacking a little bit off, Benjamin, what you were kind of saying about sort of providing that, facilitating what do people actually want from a customer standpoint. I think it's a similar approach from a sort of stakeholder management standpoint, which is kind of meeting people where they're at. And so for me, what I think is really important is saying, okay, if you've got product data that you've got housed in a sort of quote unquote, everyone's heard this one, black box of, R&D or product and engineering, and that you've got a lot of very valuable data there, I think that the strategy really has to be, how do you get that out of data warehouse or wherever it kind of resides and into the hands of kind of go-to-market or other stakeholders in the tools that they use, right? Like meeting them kind of like where they're at is what I mean by this. So, if you're a salesperson and you're in a CRM, how can, either product people or ops people facilitate that salesperson having access to sort of just in time data for that particular prospect or that particular customer that they're trying to manage, right? Like what is that particular builder? Maybe it's not necessarily the decision maker, because we've talked about kind of the difference, right, between this kind of builder mentality and kind of the developer tool set versus maybe the ultimate decision maker around ingratiating something into a new tech stack. But saying, okay, if you're the decision maker in an account and I'm a salesperson and I want to understand how is that account, be they builders or other personas, leveraging our tool, and how can the product team get me the data that I need in the place in which I'm spending all my time, the CRM, so that I can then have those kind of intelligent business conversations with whatever decision maker of the account there might be. So for me, it's then that if you have that kind of strategy, so if you're thinking about customer success or other stakeholders, they're in other tools, and getting them to sort of like go and look at your data analytics platform or something else that shows, oh, this is how frequently X customers, it doesn't scale. And B, it's miserable for everybody, because it's kind of like, oh, do we need to have multiple seats on this product analytics tool? And like, this is miserable. And it's just awful. So I think kind of meeting these teams where they're at in a, be it a sort of gain site or a CRM or whatever else it might be, to say, hey, here's the data around how that particular customer, be it persona A, B, or C, is using your tool. These are the trends. It's green arrow, red arrow, whatever it might be, so that then you can have really kind of constructive and therefore very competitive conversations with those customers. I think that's kind of how I come at it. Quite a long-winded answer to basically get the data. Oh, I'm in the dark now. Get the data out of where the product people look at it and into the hands of the other people who need that data, but don't get them out of their tools. It just won't work.
I would agree with that. And I would say, honestly, it's the same thing about impact, right? What you're really saying, I think, wasn't that long-winded, by the way. It was totally fine. I thought it was good. Just that you're trying to create impact for the people that are consuming the data, right? So you have to give them whatever it is that they need in order to be productive, make decisions, all of that. So I have a couple of tips that I would share, at least the way that we pursued it at Contentful, that I thought worked nicely. When I joined, we had a lot of different data silos and different ways of interpreting data points. And many of you will be familiar with this. Well, what is the total revenue from this customer, or what is the total number of seats, or what, and everybody's got a slightly different query that gives you a slightly different result based on all kinds of stuff. So the one thing that we did that I think it helped sort of bring it to a level of understanding everywhere, kind of Rosetta Stone, is what is your data dictionary? Agree a set of facts that you really want to have as core facts for the company, and then we'll all use those and agree that those are the right things. It's really a lot of discussion and agreement up front, but it's so worth it in the long term if you can come to that agreement. And then you have a range of ways of consuming that. So you have, and again, it's this kind of like API inputs and outputs model where you're providing the data in a number of different ways, but it's all the same data. And then you provide a number of different tools that can then manipulate that data and display it and use it and consume it in a way that's actionable for the stakeholders that need it to look differently. And so that's kind of the model that we pursued. And again, it comes back to that key point around impact. What are you trying to achieve here? Well, we all need to know what the truth is. So let's agree what that is, and then let's make that available in everything from super SQL advanced folks in Redash, or something kind of intermediate like Looker, where you can create dashboards for folks, all the way to something that's completely UX driven only, maybe some number that appears in Salesforce through an integration or whatever it might be. So that, I don't know, that's our approach for whatever that's worth. Maybe some folks out there could identify with some of the problems that you have if you don't do those fundamental agreements up front, and how to fix them.
Yeah, and Benjamin, could you give us, because I empathize so strongly with that kind of, oh, there's different sources of truth and different sort of lenses, and you could sort of splice and dice the data in slightly different ways. Could you tell people and me also a little bit more about how you kind of went about, you kind of alluded to it, the kind of discussion and back and forth up front to create that kind of data dictionary? Could you sort of talk a little bit to either kind of the process of how you went about that, and also be kind of what maybe some examples of the sort of lexicon that data dictionary is constructed with?
Yeah, so I mean, the initial discussions, first of all, it wasn't me personally involved in all the discussions, but I was part of a team that came up with it. The key thing was agreeing what are the things about customers and about our product usage and about any data that we might have in our system that we would want to know, and just create a huge list. And the list ended up being like everything from financial data to numbers of licenses, almost everything that you could think of that would be normal product information about the customer and information about their usage. Like nothing exotic, just whatever those key pieces are. And then we had a list of like at least 200 things that people thought that they wanted to know, because everybody's using something different at that point, right? They're looking at different spreadsheets and different tooling. And then we took that list of 200 and we had prioritization sessions. So this might sound very product-like. It's because exactly the process that we followed. And again, it's back to impact. Just to repeat what you said, Bella, that we had this list of 1 million things that people wanted, and then we boiled it down to, okay, what are the first 10 things that we can deliver? And we have a really talented data team, and they went off and went through all the different versions of it and looked into the data and did the archaeology and figured out, okay, this is what we can agree on is customer ARR or customer location or whatever those pieces were. And then they publish that set of facts, and we keep adding to it. Every time we need something new, we just add it to the dictionary. Then that dictionary flows out into all of the tools that can possibly query it and use it. So that was a little bit of a description of the process. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm just going to turn my light on whilst Tara asks us another hot seat question.
All right, thank you, Bella, and thank you both for sharing again some great nuggets. When we think about it, needs to make impact, it needs to be actionable. We need to make the data available for all. And when you have all of the strategies and wants and needs of an organization, making a decision about to move forward, to remain in place, can you, Benjamin, tell me a little bit about your decision-making process? How do you make decisions about how to bring this all together?
Well, so when we're thinking about product decisions, like what do we build next? Is that what you mean? Is that the
yes, yes. When you bring yes, from a product perspective, yes.
Yeah. So we have an artifact that captures key topic areas that we want to make sure every product manager thinks really deeply about before they propose that we invest in building it. And the decision making really comes down to front loading as much of the inquiry, discovery, spelunking the data as much as is necessary to come up with a case for investment that really makes sense. And so the idea is, our philosophy of how you build things is ask as many hard questions as you can as early as you can, before you then engage a whole team of people to build the solution. It doesn't mean that you don't engage them to try to think about the problem, and that you also engage them to think about what might the eventual solution be, but really understand what that problem is before you go off and really try to solve it with code. So in our process, it's everything from the basics of what are the jobs to be done? Like what are our customers asking us for? Do we really fully understand it? And we've unpacked it to the point where we think that we are down to the nub of what that thing really is. What is the possible workarounds that you might have today to solve that problem? And that can be really informative about how customers are trying to grapple with things. We talk about what might the go-to-market look like? What might the pricing and packaging look like? So we try to think about really all of the angles, and not every single angle is applicable to every project. We have infrastructural improvement projects that have nothing to do with pricing and packaging, right? They just end up replacing something you already have, but in a better way or in a more efficient way. But we still evaluate all those things anyway to make sure that we've asked the questions, and then we set them aside, and then we do prioritization based on what we think that expected impact will be, based on our understanding of the problem, what that solution might be worth to customers in terms of their experience. And I would say, for that data project that I mentioned, for choosing a new tech stack, we do the same process. It's always discovery, inquiry, interrogation of our thought process, make sure we've uncovered as many assumptions as we can, and then we decide to invest. And I know it sounds very heavyweight when you describe it that way. You think oh man, that must be just like all of this time in meetings and trying to figure out. But actually, we value progress over perfection with this. So there's a certain amount that makes sense, and beyond which it doesn't make sense. And so we try to balance that as well, and just kind of have as much discovery in flight as possible, so that we can get to the really important opportunities.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. And I like what you just said, progress over perfection, because if we leaned into perfection, we would never put a product out into market. Oh. So Bella, how do you evaluate utilizing additional and new tools to execute on elements of product strategy versus building in-house and using engineering resources in the product teams?
Yeah, so I think that it kind of goes back a little bit to what feels like the theme of the day is kind of on the impact, and then actually some of those sort of beneath the sort of impact cloud, the sort of strands that feed up into it. So we do start to look at things like efficiency, velocity, with that impact in mind. So I think when we're looking at sort of evaluating tools, a key thing is who's going to use it. So I think that's incredibly important. Like obviously Benjamin's talked a lot about sort of the developer focus and the builder sort of persona, and that's definitely something that we think about. So I'll give you an example, right? Like, you know, the low code wave is firmly here and very exciting. But, you know, you think about what that facilitates. So within the product team, you know, we're looking at when we're evaluating tools, you know, can we use it as product people? Can the product managers use this to drive the impact that they're wanting to see? Or are they reliant or dependent on other functions, be it engineering, or be it maybe design, or be it something else? And I think that there's a time and place for sort of saying, yeah, we're happy for things to be very heavily dependent on other teams, and it's always going to be a collaborative process. And that's always important to kind of call that out and say, yeah, you know, product managers aren't going to be sort of like building stuff, you know, on a sort of lightweight tool that then they're going to sort of hack somehow into the application. Like that's absolutely not what I'm saying, but more it's just thinking about, okay, well, if we can be quite intentional about the impact, and the builder or the kind of creator is a product person as opposed to a developer, what are the sort of needs and requirements of that person? And it needs to obviously be flexible, it needs to be nimble, and we're thinking about tools from that sort of standpoint, so that then that sort of efficiency and velocity around any sort of addition to our tech stack can be kind of realized. So, you know, you think about data analytics tools that product managers use. You know, are you reliant on a data team or a data scientist to write SQL, or are you looking at other tools that are, you know, heat mapping or sort of screen capture tools? And, you know, how reliant might a product person be on the implementation of those tools with engineering code snippets, etc. And then you think about sort of in-app messaging, right? And tools that you might want to add to your tech stack to facilitate product managers being easily able to sort of send messages to customers. You think about kind of things like intercom or other in-app chat. And I think always having that cap of like, okay, well, who's going to be using this? What impact are they trying to drive towards? And then if they're not able to get to that impact with that person as the persona of who's going to use the tool, then it's a time to sort of segue and say, like, this tool is too limiting, or achieving this with an external tool and in addition to our tech stack actually doesn't make sense. And it does make sense for us to build something quick and easy, or maybe invest in something more significant, right? Like internal tooling to facilitate customer management at scale or something. You know, I think that's then where the conversation becomes, if you're not able to have the impact that you want with the person who is going to own the sort of creation or the building with that tool, then you can start to segue into other areas. But I think it's just thinking about who's going to be using it and the impact that they want to have. And then are they able to achieve that impact efficiently? Are they able to do fast and on our teams? If so, is that okay? Versus that's going to slow down our efficiency.
Thank you so much, Bella. And thank you, Benjamin. That concludes our question and answer portion of the panel. Thank you, panelists, for your thoughtful answers. I would love to give each of you a moment to share some key takeaways for our audience. And Benjamin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've probably repeated it 5 times, but I do think it's really crucial that you think about impact of what you're doing rather than the specific tools or parts of the stack that you might be considering. What are you trying to achieve? And it's always got to go back to customer value, whether that customer value is internal or external. Really thinking about that, and then thinking about the impact for them. And as Bella mentioned, like knowing what that persona is and who you're trying to drive impact for is really crucial and fundamental to that. I guess, you know, this idea of in engineering terms, separating concerns is also a really powerful one to introduce into your organizational thinking, because it's also the interfaces between product and the rest of the organization, or between the data team and the sales team. What can each of those individual experts really provide versus the consumers of the information or the services that they're producing, and really keeping those boundaries between them malleable, collaborative, but also clean, so you know where those handoffs are, and you know. And I think when you think that way, and that's essentially like an analogy to the builder mentality for developers, where you provide them an API with all the services and then they create something brand new. That's almost like the cultural thing that you can bring into your organization as well, that I think is also super powerful.
Thank you, Benjamin. Bella?
Yeah, I think for me, I'll echo lots of the stuff that Benjamin said. And yeah, this kind of focus on impact. I think the thing for me is also to include kind of thinking around sort of nimbleness, right? We haven't talked about this that much, but I think that the key takeaway for me is, if you can drive towards that impact, it's also impactful to think about, you know, with the builder persona, with the value that you want to drive for customers, how can you pivot and adapt when, you know, that you're not able to drive towards either the right builder, the right persona, or you're not seeing the value that you want to have, or you're not having that impact, and kind of using your tech stack to be quite nimble and quite competitive in that way, I think kind of facilitates that ultimate impact that you're able to have. So I think that when you're evaluating sort of whether to add something new or who's going to use it, things like that, I think driving towards that impact and being able to shift gears and to say, okay, this is something that we're going to include, and we haven't sort of, to Benjamin's point, we've got a kind of a clean handoff between different things, and it's collaborative and it facilitates that, but we're also able to sort of shift gears, change, add people, add tools, and kind of respond quite nimbly. And I think that that's also really important in kind of driving towards that impact.
Awesome. I mean, so much value has been shared today. Thank you so much for joining us and being here at ProductCon. To learn more about Contentful and Trey.io, please visit their booth at the XPO Hall. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Bella.
Thank you.